Good evening and welcome to this emergency podcast on NBA free agency. Terry Lashier from 98.3 WPKO in Bell Fountain. Phil Holtz joining me from Yes FM in Toledo, and Dan Kontnick from Intercom in Detroit. Gentlemen, how are you doing tonight?
Very well.
Doing pretty great, Terry. How are you?
I'm doing good. So we got some big news. The King has found his new throne. He's moving to LA. LeBron James, the big story of free agency, is what we've been waiting for since seems like the beginning of the season. So let's go into the whys, the whats, the hows, and what does this mean moving forward with LeBron James and the Lakers, the Cavaliers, and even LeBron James' legacy. So first of all, the why. Why did LeBron James go to LA to become a Laker? And I have my own theories, but Phil, I want to know, why do you think LeBron became a Laker?
I mean, people make all the arguments that people have been making, whether it's his legacy, just going where so many other great players, arguably 3 of the top 8 or 10 players have all played. And Shaq, you have Kareem, you have Magic, you have Kobe. So possibly him just going there to just get in on the Laker legacy. You have that angle of it. You also have the angle of LA would be a good spot with multiple different prospective schools that LeBron Jr. could go. Or LeBron's kid, who's looking like potentially could have the skill set to make it in the NBA. And a lot of people are talking about LeBron possibly wanting to play with his kid at some point. And so that's another angle that you could look at it from. And I mean, and obviously the big one, the fact that he has a house there. And so you know, he likes the perspective of living in LA and the chance of just living there full time. And I think that all of us from living in Ohio at one point or another, we could take pride in it, but at the same time, living in California, that's a pretty big pull. So, I mean, those are the whys from my end, I guess. And plus the fact that I'd rather have a lot of good young talent than whatever it is you want to call what the Cavaliers have.
Yeah, kind of a mess of a cap situation. What about you, Dan?
Well, first, I agree with what Phil said. Ohio is basically like the state embodiment of every like rural small town in America. Everybody absolutely will defend it against anyone that's going to trash it, but man, you feel really good about it when someone can get out of it and go somewhere like LA or even New York or somewhere that's not the crappy rural small town. I think I can all say that. I think we've all experienced that. Terry, you and I kind of talked about it on Twitter a little back and forth. I think this was a move for the next phase of LeBron James's career. I think he's looking at this from not only a basketball perspective, because I think, like what Phil said, there's a lot of young talent there. It's an exciting franchise with Magic Johnson at the helm, which can attract free agents like we've already kind of seen over the past 24 hours. But I think also you take into account that LeBron has already, played a supporting role in a major motion, at least one major motion picture. He's been the executive producer for several, network TV shows. He's got his hands in so many different things outside of just basketball that I think moving to LA, the center of everything entertainment, is kind of where he wants to set up the next part of his career. And I think to do it under the watchful and helpful eye of a guy like Magic Johnson, who is basically what LeBron James will probably become, an all-time great that goes on to do great things outside of basketball, that's the perfect place to do it. So I think this was a move for a guy that's, I think I heard Emil Hassan say today, he still wants to win rings, but he's not chasing them like he has been.
Yeah, I kind of agree with both of you. I think it goes beyond basketball. I'll start off by saying I was completely wrong. I thought LeBron was going to stay a Cavalier, and I underestimated, I think, 2 things. One of them, I think maybe the relationship with Dan Gilbert and maybe the whole Cleveland Cavaliers organization as a whole maybe played a little bit more into it than I thought it ever would. And I think the big one is what you just mentioned, Dan, the limelight of Hollywood. I think he really, really wants to get to that acting career and do. Magic Johnson is everything that a young black male from a bad situation growing up could ever strive to be. A top 5 NBA player, the son of a garbage man, and a guy that was more successful after his top 5 NBA career by a lot. And it's hard to even fathom that he did all these things. He's the part owner of the Dodgers, and he is now back in with his organization that he played his career with. I mean, he is everything a player like LeBron James would want to be. So it makes so much sense to want to team up with Magic Johnson. But it's funny that we can say this and we can all agree that it's more than just basketball the reason he wants to go to LA, because strictly basketball, I don't think it makes a lot of sense. I really don't. I think if it was strictly basketball, and I think after Paul George re-signed with Oklahoma City, that kind of put LeBron in a bit of a corner, because I think he really was kind of banking on LeBron and Paul George teaming up. When that didn't happen, he was already going to go to LA. This has already been decided. But now the team is not nearly as good as it would be with Paul George. And we had those 2 contracts set up, and it looked like it was all set. So now what do you do? Because now if you go to LA, it's obvious it's not just about the basketball, because you're not going to win. This Lakers team is not going to be able to compete with the Warriors next year. Honestly, I don't think they're better than the Rockets. I don't think they're better than the Celtics. You put LeBron on the Sixers, they're right there. They're right there. Yeah. And I don't like the scheme fit with the Sixers. I never did. But they got enough talented players that it makes sense that if he goes there, this is going to be a really good team, a team that's probably going to come out the East and has a legitimate shot at making another finals. And if you're LeBron James, you got to love how that sounds. But he went to LA. So that tells me he is thinking all about post-career. You're right. I don't think he's chasing the rings as much. I think that still matters to him. But there's so much when it comes to chasing Michael Jordan. And I think LeBron is such a businessman that he has moved past the winning, because I don't think he's ever going to get there. And I think he realizes he's never going to get to 6. And even if he gets to 6, I think a lot of people are going to bring up the losses. I think that's a terrible argument, but I think a lot of people will. But it just seems unrealistic that he's going to get to the 6, even though he's playing the best basketball in his career, which is unfathomable how he's doing it at this age. And it just seems to get better and better. But the odds of beating the Warriors and beating the Celtics and Sixers, who are obviously the future of this league for the next 5 years, it just doesn't seem very possible. So he's moving to another area where Michael Jordan was a monster in, and that's the entertainment industry. Through Air Jordan, through Space Jam, through everything, Michael Jordan just seeped into pop culture like no athlete ever had before him, and still does. I mean, if you go to China, he's still one of the highest selling jerseys. Guy hasn't played in forever, and he's still that dude. And it's just incredible. I think that's where LeBron is going to try to make his next step, not on the basketball court, but everything that goes besides it, which is crazy to think about to me, because we're talking about the best player in the world without a question, and a dude that is a top 5 player that is playing his best basketball ever, in my opinion. And it's not a big deal that he's not trying to win championships. And I think that's kind of strange that we all are just kind of acknowledging that fact. And go ahead.
Sorry, I think that's almost kind of a testament to like how the NBA is set up now. It's not. I don't think it's so much about being the all-time greatest when it comes down to like the stat line. I think a lot of these guys now are figuring that they want to be the all-time greatest in terms of who do I appeal to? Who are my fans? How many fans do I have? You know, am I the most not so much well liked, but am I the most popular, person in the NBA in the NBA world? Just with social media and like LeBron's doing. I think all the stuff outside of it, the entertainment, the community service stuff. I think a lot of these guys now see themselves as more brands than just basketball players, and so there's almost like another game that they have to play outside of just the basketball side. It's the PR side. I think that's where LeBron succeeds.
Yeah, I say he's a little bit different than 99.9% of players, because he is a true businessman, and we've seen this his entire career. Everything is very calculated. Everything has a plan behind it, put in place. it seems like years in advance, and he tries to follow it to a T, and he has control of every organization he's been at, and he likes to follow his exact regimen. But to me, I still have a hard time getting past the idea that one of the best players ever is kind of in the prime of his career moving to the after career mode. That's kind of something you do like when you have your Achilles torn like Kobe did, and you start moving towards body armor and doing short films. It's when your team is irrelevant. LeBron is as relevant as he's ever been, if not more. So it's still pretty wild to me, and I agree that's exactly what happened, because if it was for just basketball purposes, it was to topple the Warriors, he wouldn't be in LA right now. As soon as Paul George signed with OKC, there's no way I think he goes to LA, because something that you just mentioned, we were discussing, was a long-term play. Now, there is a lot of opportunity next year in 2019 for the Lakers to go out and grab a Kawhi Leonard, if they don't trade for him this year, to go out and maybe try to swing a Klay Thompson away from the Warriors. Jimmy Butler is going to be a free agent. And there's some dudes next year for sure. There's always dudes. But I always say you don't waste a guy like LeBron in the prime of his career, even for a season. You just can't do it, because every year you have a shot at winning an NBA championship.
Oh,
because
no one told the Cavs that.
Yeah, they didn't. You know what? Let's move us to the next topic, Dan Gilbert and the Cavs, because I think this is something that is very polarizing. You either really hate this guy, or you think he did everything he possibly could to LeBron, and LeBron kind of left them scorned. I'm more in the middle, because I think there was mistakes made, but on both sides. Now, for the first, how many years was he in Cleveland before he left? 8 years, was it?
It was 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, and then he went to Miami. He got no help. He got no help through free agents or drafting that entire time in Cleveland. The first go-around, LeBron had absolutely zero help. Since he's been back, they have done everything to help that guy out. I mean, there's only one move that has not made any sort of sense, and that was David Griffin not being resigned. That was the only one that really kind of perplexes me. But they got the players he wanted. I mean, they got Dunleavy, who was obviously not that great, but it was one of LeBron's dudes he wanted, and they tried him out. I mean, Kyle Korver's not on this team if it's not for LeBron James. Tristan Thompson does not get that deal if it's not for LeBron James. J.R. Smith does not get that deal if it's not for LeBron James. They don't trade their entire roster mid-season this year if it's not for LeBron James. Like, they at least tried. It didn't always work out, and a lot of those dudes performed horribly for the contracts that they got. But I feel like they at least tried in the second go-around.
Yeah, I would say that they tried, but you could have put a trash bag full of the confetti from the Cavs championship parade in the seat of I can't believe I just blanked on his name.
Clarkson?
No, the GM. Why?
Kobe Altman.
Gilbert, Dan Gilbert.
Oh,
I can't believe I forgot Dan Gilbert. You could have put a trash bag full of the confetti from the parade in Dan Gilbert's seat, and you could have said it tried. It doesn't mean that it was any good, or that he was any good at it. I always think that he succeeded so well in Miami because he had a Pat Riley there to tell him no, to tell him that this is how it's going to work. It's going to be Eric Spoelstra. You're going to listen to him. We're going to make these moves. We want your input on them, but this is what's going to be happening. We're doing what's best to make this the best team. I think they gave him too much free reign, and let him put the team in a bad position with a lot of those contracts, like Tristan Thompson. But that's the one that always stuck out to me was I still can't believe he got that kind of deal. But I think that's where a lot of it falls, is that Gilbert really couldn't say no to LeBron. And sometimes with a guy like that, you've got to be able to put a check on him and, have a reality check, because he's not always going to have the right idea of who to have to get or make trades. And we saw that the last couple of years. So I think a lot of that is on David Griffin's Dan Gilbert's style of letting LeBron take control, and then also when he had control was able to do absolutely nothing with it.
Yeah, and I don't. If I was LeBron, I've said this before. If I was LeBron, I would have never went back to Cleveland personally, just because you saw how Dan Gilbert trashed you when you left, and so personally, when that happens, I'd be like, all right, well, I know where he stands. Not necessarily fans obviously don't feel that way. I mean, some of them do because they burned his jersey, but it's like if you're gonna go at me like that with everything that I've done, I got you to a championship with a bunch of no names, and after I left, they were all garbage. Like name me two of the bench players or a couple of the bench players that were on that team that he took to the finals the first time he was in Cleveland.
The
That
starters
team was
were all the bench players. There should have
exactly.
been.
That team was absolute garbage, and he did everything. And the thing is, it's not like I am the farthest thing that you can get from a LeBron homer because LeBron kind of drives me nuts, but at the same time, I realize that he is an absolute amazing basketball player, and it's it's ridiculous to say that he's not incredible. And so when he went back the second time, I'm again, like I said, I'm shocked that he did it. I wouldn't have done it if I was him, but it's like he won them a chip, and he's but at the same time, like this year, he wanted those trades in my eyes. So it's like I'm not saying that he had all the help because I mean that's only half the job is making the trades, but the other half is the players have to hold up their end of the deal, which they obviously didn't do. But Dan Gilbert doesn't know how to it isn't the best at running a franchise. Let's just put it out there. He didn't know how to do it when LeBron was there the first time. Didn't know how to do it when LeBron left, clearly, and he doesn't know how to do it now. The only reason he got that first chip is because he had Kyrie Irving, Kevin Love, and LeBron James, and they were all gelling in a great funk at that time. They were just flowing so well together. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't blame him whatsoever for leaving, and I think Dan Gilbert is extremely lucky to have a job.
Well, yeah, I don't think anyone really blames LeBron for leaving. If you're a Cleveland fan and you blame LeBron for leaving again, and just don't really have that gratitude for winning the championship, you are the essence of why everyone despises Cleveland sports fans. Because all you ever heard was, "We just want to win one. We just want to win one," and for good reason. I mean, it was 52 years. That's a long time for three sports franchises to never win a championship. So it was reasonable. And then they won one. The most dramatic Game 7 I have ever seen. It was the best series I've probably ever seen. Baseball, hockey, not football, basketball. It was the best. LeBron with the block, Kyrie with the shot. There is no better story beating the 73-win Warriors team coming down from 3-1. It was perfect. And he did it. And he brought you the title. And then there was always this sense of like it was owed to them for some reason. And then finally now I think you're getting the sense of that gratitude for LeBron from a lot of them. I said the vast majority of responses I've seen has been pro LeBron and thanking him, which is what it should be. Because without him, they don't even sniff the NBA Finals. And this has been an incredible run for the Cavs. It's going to probably be lost in the history because of the Warriors. But 4 straight Finals appearances, I don't care how bad the East is, that's impressive. That is incredibly impressive that they were able to do that. And it's a testament just to kind of the player that LeBron James has been the majority of his career. I think a lot of what Dan says is kind of interesting because I have usually a lot of times the exact opposite opinion of that. I think LeBron's biggest failure of his career would be in Miami. I would say that winning 2 titles in Miami is the reason why I have a hard time considering LeBron's the best player ever because there's no doubt in my mind that they should have won all 4 in the years he was there. And he went on and said of himself he should have, I think it was 8 that he claimed he was going to win when he first went down there before he ever played a game. So I think that is his biggest failure of all time to be Miami.
I think it's you could definitely consider the biggest failure of him as like a player, but I think that out of all the teams that he's played for, that whole Miami situation was the absolute best.
For sure.
Yeah, to have it set up, and if he had stayed, like what Phil said, if he had just stayed there and not gone back to Cleveland, like that's the dynasty that Trump, like the Warriors are chasing the Heat at this point if he stays there, because he's winning at least 2 more. Out of the last 4 years, he's winning at least 2 more rings out of that if he stays in Miami, because it was such a good setup from top down, organization all the way down.
That's a hot take. I don't agree with that at all. I think the Cavs the next year after he left were better than the Heat would have been if he would have stayed, because of getting Kevin Love and trading Andrew Wiggins. That's another reason why I give Gilbert some credit, is because they traded away Andrew Wiggins, who it kind of looks silly now, but at the time, Andrew Wiggins was the biggest recruit out of high school since LeBron. I mean, we've had some big ones. He wasn't the biggest dude out of college since LeBron, but he was the biggest high school recruit out of high school since LeBron. And then kind of underperformed at Kansas, but that was a big deal. I mean, when Drake's writing songs about you, you're the man. And he has not lived up to expectations, but that was a leap of faith to trade Kevin Love for him straight up. And hey, it worked out, and Kevin Love helped win them a championship. So that was smart from LeBron in the end, and it all seemed to work out. But I do think that Kyrie, K-Love, LeBron, because we didn't even get to see him in the finals in the first year because Kevin Love and Kyrie were hurt. I think that team was better than that Heat team was. I mean, the Heat team the year before lost to that Spurs team that was older than dirt. I think that's the worst. I think that's worse than the Mavericks loss that they lost because they had so much more talent than that Spurs team did. Of course, it's a Popovich coach team. The Spurs are always solid. They do this, they do that well. LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Ray Allen, Chris Bosh should not have lost to that Spurs team. That is a really bad.
But you also had that was Kawhi Leonard too on that team.
Yes, a baby Kawhi Leonard.
He came. Well, that was like his coming out party. He was
great. Yeah, he was MVP.
You've got a point there though. There was. I mean, I think it. Yeah, you're right. Maybe not as dominant as the Warriors are right now, but who knows what happens if and buts, right?
And it's really interesting to think about because what happens if LeBron goes back to Cleveland and kind of like you said, they put a little bit more of a leash on him? Because the thing that I think most Cleveland fans are upset about today is the actual length of the contract LeBron signed with the Lakers, because he was doing like 1 year, 1-on-1s every year with the Cavs. And I think that was to keep Gilbert honest because of how bad he was in the first time around. But if they would have signed a 4-year deal with LeBron, he was going to stay there for a long time. That was guaranteed. Do they make all these moves? Do they feel the pressure of having to sign big-time free agents to make some splashes to constantly give LeBron the help that he wanted? I don't know. I think that's really interesting because obviously he got full run. LeBron James was able to do and bring in whoever he wanted in Cleveland. We saw it time and time again. Teams don't make that many roster transactions without a person wanting to do that. That's just not how NBA teams are run. So clearly we got someone working behind the scenes. But if they did have a little bit tighter stranglehold, like you said with the Heat, because the Heat did not do that every year. I mean, they brought in free agents, but it's usually like Jermaine O'Neal's and Rashard Lewis's and dudes that were ring chasing. It wasn't it wasn't Kevin Love's and trading your entire team at the break. So it was a very different scenario there. So I don't know what happens. So maybe you can blame Dan Gilbert for that, but I say you have to put a little bit of blame on LeBron too, because these were the dudes he wanted. I think the biggest thing that I would blame the Cavs for in this go around is letting David Griffin walk, who LeBron liked, but more importantly, I think he meshed the egos well with Kyrie Irving, which until he left, I didn't know how strange of a dude Kyrie was. I had no idea. Like, I've been following this guy for a long time, and I didn't realize this guy's crazy. Like, when you listen to him speak in interviews, is like, this guy went to Duke? Really? Okay, that's interesting. But he's not stupid. He just has some really far out ideas, and I didn't really know that. And a guy like that who doesn't like to be the second fiddle, I mean, he's a first overall pick. The guy is incredibly talented, one of the best point guards in the league. They were able to make it work. They let Griffin go. Instantly doesn't work. They try to trade him. I'd be mad too. I don't blame Kyrie. I'd be furious if I brought this city a championship, because he did. Without Kyrie, they do not get close in that final series. And then they have to get rid of him. You have to make egos work in the NBA. We've seen it forever. It is a league filled with ego-driven people. Everyone thinks they're the best superstar in the world. That's just how basketball players are. It is more individualistic than any other sport. So I think the failure to make that work out is the biggest thing I would put on the Cavs ownership, because just giving up, and especially the trade they got, that was a horrible, horrible trade. Now you can say that's hindsight 2020. I don't know. I thought that was pretty bad from the get-go. And giving up a guy like Kyrie in that situation to your conference rival, I say that is the biggest failure of the Dan Gilbert, LeBron James second time around.
I have a question for both of you, for Terry and for Dan. I saw this on Twitter, and it is kind of far out there, just the fact of how far ahead he would have had to be thinking. But do you guys think that LeBron knew at the trade deadline of the real possibility of going to LA and trading Jordan Clarkson and Nance to the Cavs to help clear up cap space? Do you think that he was planning that ahead at all?
Yes. Yes.
I'll say he 100% knew he was going to LA.
Chess, dude.
Yeah, it would not surprise me.
Genius.
I mean, I don't know if he specifically targeted LA to do that. I think that'd be next level assassinship from LeBron. But I definitely think he knew he was going to LA at the time. So I can see it. I can really see it, and that would be an all-time genius move.
In an NBA world where Lance Stevenson ends up with LeBron James in LA, I want to believe in all of it. I want it all to be true.
Yeah, Rondo too. That brings me to the next area. What do the Lakers do from here? Because they didn't get Paul George. They didn't get DeMarcus Cousins, because now he's on the Warriors Monstars lineup. And what do the Lakers do? Because I think these deals are terrible. This is clearly LeBron signings. For a few, Rajon Rondo's LeBron signing. There's not a chance that Magic Johnson went out there and thought, you know what, I like Rajon Rondo enough to give him $9 million and make it so we can't hire anyone else that can help us out next season with zero shooting on that team. He's a smart basketball player, really good defender. He's a LeBron type of guy. I have no idea about Lance Stevenson. I can't believe they gave him the MLE. The Pacers didn't pick him up for less money, I'm pretty sure. That one doesn't make any sort of sense to me. I have no idea. I have no idea what that's all about. But to me, seeing all these moves, the rehiring of Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who is an up-and-down player, it seems like they're adding a lot of players that you would not expect to be backups for getting about 10, 12 minutes a game. Because the Lakers now have a decent amount of clog, especially in the 2-3 positions with Ingram and Kuzma, and now you got Lonzo and Rondo competing at the 1. That's not terrible, but you also have Josh Hart in there too. You got all these players that you have the budding guys, you got the free agents that probably think they should be getting a decent amount of time. Does that make you think that they're more likely to trade for Kawhi or less likely?
Well, I think sorry, Phil, go ahead.
No, that's all you.
Okay, Phil, I'll take the lead.
All right, thank you.
I think it's less likely. I think this first year, we kind of touched on it briefly, but a lot of these contracts, they're 1-year deals, especially I know Rondo is.
They all are, all of them.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of flexibility. There's, I think this is going to be sort of a feel it out year. I know, Terry, you've said you don't waste a year of LeBron, but this is a long con. I think this is we're setting up the dynasty, and I think I hope that he maybe kind of learned from what he did in Cleveland, that you can't just go and play NBA 2K dynasty mode and trade all of your assets for, the coolest names or who you really like and want to be on your team. I think that he has an idea of making this work long term, and he's brought in guys that maybe he's trying to see if he's got any sort of fit with them. If it doesn't work out, you get them off the books next year. Maybe if you bring in a guy like maybe let's say just to throw it out there, Lonzo Ball ends up backing up Rondo and actually finds out that he's a fairly decent role player, and maybe you flip him for something else later on. I think that there's so many different possibilities with this. The way that it's all set up is that he's definitely not going to win this year, but I think it's set up to that they can have enough flexibility to do pretty much almost whatever they want the next few years.
All right, what about you, Phil?
I'll be completely honest. I didn't think that LeBron would go to LA without knowing that Paul George was going to go to LA, first off. But secondly, I didn't think that he would go there unless they had a trade lined up for Lonzo. Not the fact that I don't think that Lonzo could be a good player. I do. But it's the fact that I didn't think that LeBron would want to try and deal with LeVar's antics.
Uh-oh, the LeVar question.
And I'm just like with the things that he's brought up and what he said, and even before LeBron said that he's going to the Lakers, even all the hype that LeVar brought to that, it's just another thing bringing attention, and LeVar Ball attention is not good attention, and so that's just one of those things. And also when it comes to the trades and the talk about possibly Kawhi going to the Lakers, what I've heard, I just heard this today, was that none of the trade offers that the Lakers have thrown at the Spurs, none of them involved Kyle Kuzma, which apparently, of what I've heard at least, is someone who Pop would want. And without that, I doubt they do it. So, I mean, it's obviously a game of chess because they have to wait it out to see what assets they can move and what they can do. But no, it's definitely like you and Dan both said, it's definitely a log jam at those guard positions with Rondo and with Ball, because there was a report already out that said whoever performs the best is going to have the starting job, and that is one of those statements, because a lot of times coaches will say that, but they'll never stick to it. But this is one of those times where I honestly do believe that statement, that whichever player actually plays better will have that starting job. So, we'll see. It's one of those things. It's almost like a soap opera, except you don't know what's going to happen. This one's usually you can plan out those shows and be like, well, this is actually going to happen. That's going to go to this. That's going to go to this.
LeBron's not going to go into a coma for 2 years and come back as his identical twin.
Exactly.
Is Phil Jackson going to come back and make out with him in midcourt? That's what I want to know.
Find out all of this next week.
Next week
on LeBronzo.
Days of our Lakers. Yes, I'm looking forward to that next season. Now, what I think right now is happening in the Kawhi situation, I think on paper it is all adding up more towards Dan's line of thinking. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense for these contracts because only one of them, JaVale, is on a minimum deal where they're signing players for a decent amount of cap room. If they do that, it tells me that they're not really interested in providing any other sort of help. This is going to be the team next year. So if this is going to be the team next year, you're going to have to give up a couple of those young dudes for who knows what's going to happen with Kawhi if he's going to be the same player that he was, which I think a lot of us assume he's going to be, but it's not a guarantee. You're mortgaging a lot. And I mean a lot with some of these young dudes. Kuzma, I think, is by far and away the most valuable prospect they have right now. That guy is going to be a superstar, and is going to be a dude you want to give up easily. Another reason why I think the trade is a little less likely now, though I still think they're going to go for it in the end, is what happened today with Julius Randle, because they're talking about doing a sign and trade with him, which I did not like at first because I thought Julius can choose wherever he wants to go, but it only signed for $9 million. I thought he was going to be making the ballpark 15, 16. I was flabbergasted that he only got 9, considering that's what Rondo got. That's a horrible trade-off between the Lakers and the Pelicans. Absolutely atrocious. But they let him go. That's a pretty big piece of trade ammo that I think the Spurs would have liked. But they still got the pieces. It just doesn't seem like there is a whole lot of desire to trade for him on the Eastern Conference front. The Sixers and the Celtics, which if I'm one of them, I'd do it in a heartbeat. I think it makes way more sense for Philly because I think the Celtics pieces are better. But if you have a shot at making a title, one thing I think we get wrapped up in all the time is, yeah, but what happens next year? What happens next year? Down the road, down the road. We're always thinking down the road in basketball. Not many teams have won NBA titles. If you have the shot to win a title, if you're a team like the Philadelphia 76ers, who hasn't done so since Moses Malone was playing for you, you do it. You take that shot for this year, even if it's only this year, because when are you going to get that shot again where the East is this bad? It is pretty much you and the Celtics, and if Giannis can pull something out in Milwaukee, that is your chances. This is it. If I'm them, I'm going for it, but it doesn't seem like that's the case. So Lakers, I don't feel like need to put out that big offer. So like how you mentioned, Phil, it seems like everything's been underwhelming. Until there's a little bit of heat from another team, I keep lowballing him because Kawhi Leonard will certainly sit out all next season. There's no doubt in my mind about that. Do you guys think the same way?
Yeah.
Definitely. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think he will sit every single game. He was willing to sit through the playoffs where they were getting absolutely waxed, and he was completely healthy, and he was at home on Fortnite during games, putting that on Instagram. Like, he has no problem letting this team flounder. So you have to get something for him. You can't wait to the trade deadline because the offers are going to get worse and worse and worse. So they will accept something. I think the Sixers are going to budge first, and the Lakers will give an offer that is going to be a decent amount better, and he'll go there. I think that's a dumb choice. I think what Dan is saying, the long con, makes way more sense in the end. But I don't know. I've watched the Lakers for a long time through different ownerships. It is a team that likes to go big or go home. I mean, they traded for Dwight Howard and gave up everything when the dude said he didn't want to play there. And then he left. And that's what happens. But that's just what LA is. They think they're the best, and they think everyone's going to come back to them. I think it's dangerous because also to let him go to another team for the Paul George factor. Last year at this time, Paul George going to the Lakers was a 100% guarantee. Yeah. 100% guarantee. And he re-signed with Oklahoma City. I still don't get it. I can't believe Oklahoma City is going to pay. They're going to pay like $200 million in luxury tax when they were unwilling to pay like $80 to re-sign James Harden. So that makes no freaking sense in the world either. But that's what the NBA is right now. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So if I'm the Lakers, I think there's a little bit of incentive to get him, even though it makes way more sense in the long run to let him wait and hope for the best and maybe try to get someone else. But if you don't, think about what happens then. How bad does that look? Kawhi Leonard gets traded to the Sixers. He re-signs there. Klay Thompson decides he doesn't care about money at all. Re-signs with the Warriors. Jimmy Butler decides he likes it in Minnesota, or Jimmy Butler can get a better deal elsewhere. He thinks he wants to be the guy. No one comes to the Lakers. And then you waste your entire time with LeBron. Because if they go 3 years without making significant strides, there's not a chance LeBron picks up that fourth year. Not a chance.
Terry, maybe you missed the press conference when Magic Johnson said that he's Magic Johnson.
I did.
He's not worried about bringing in those free agents. Those, I think, I agree with you. I think that long con's the way to go, but if it doesn't work out, it's going to look really, really bad. But I feel something about this partnership. I think Magic pulls it out.
Yeah, he certainly has the ability. I mean, obviously, he is a icon in the basketball industry. And, yeah, that press conference, I thought he was about to take a basketball and do his skyhook from 1980. I thought he was about this close away. Someone had a nice follow-up question and said, this is a different job, right? So,
I don't care. I'm Magic Johnson.
Which is the greatest because, yeah, it is completely different. He got LeBron, but that's going to be the next key. LeBron needs help. And, of course, we talked about how LeBron is thinking post-career stuff, and we're all on the same page on that. Magic Johnson is all about on the court. He doesn't care about LeBron's post-court stuff. He needs to make a winner in the next few years, and how to do that is going to be very difficult. And I don't know if it's smart to trade for Kawhi because I personally wouldn't do it, but it's risky either way because you let him go and he gets elsewhere and re-signs with them. You are in a really difficult position. But then that's why the bench signings are so confusing me right now because you can get multiple dudes at men's salary for what you can get with one Rajon Rondo, which I don't know how you guys feel about Rajon Rondo, but I don't think he's going to start. I saw that report, too, that said they're going to compete for it. I don't believe it at all. Magic said Lonzo is going to be a Hall of Famer, so I don't think he's going to get Rajon Rondo starting over him at 97 years old. But I don't know. Could be wrong. Could be wrong.
I don't know. I used to love Rondo when he was a Celtic with us, obviously.
When he was great.
Right, yeah, when he was great. And I think the dude's a head case now. I actually saw someone on Twitter posted about an interaction they had with Rondo that explained it all in New Orleans, where someone asked him about the triple-double or something that Anthony Davis had and asked Rondo what it's like to watch him. And Rondo asked the reporter, do you want me to just suck him off? He had no other opinion on it whatsoever. Rondo is about getting his.
Yes.
And I think even playing with LeBron, he's not going to he's definitely not going to be ashamed or be humble by playing there.
Yeah, and he was a disaster in Chicago. That was the worst situation ever.
And then the Mavs. The Mavs was almost just as bad.
And so, I mean, and he's been on the team. The dude's been on like 7 teams in the last 4 years. He's clearly not a dude you want in your locker room. Which, I mean, it's a 1-year deal, so I don't think it's a massive problem or anything like that. It just is very curious. It's very curious that they're making these signings, because it's the money, so it makes me curious, because you could round out this roster with dudes that have always been around LeBron, the Channing Frys of the world, dudes that are willing to play, like JaVale, which surprised me because JaVale is really a solid player when he's not doing really dumb stuff. Like, he was great in the finals. He was a really big part of them beating the Cavs.
Yeah.
So, I think that's the type of signings I was expecting. Lance Stevenson and Rajon Rondo were not exactly what I was expecting. So I think it really sets up an interesting situation, and I have a really hard time believing that this is going to be the team to go with this year. If they're going to do nothing else. There was a rumor Tyreke Evans was meeting with them, but I saw something that he signed with the Pacers, not confirmed. It did not get the official Woj bomb, so I don't believe it. And Shams wasn't all over it, so I'm not about that either. So if it doesn't get one of those two, I'm not sure what's going to happen. But I don't know. It's going to be really interesting. If they get the long con idea, I think that's smart. We'll see if it works out. But the reason why they're doing all these things, of course, is to eventually beat the dynasty in the Bay with the Golden State Warriors. So do you think – I'm not going to say next year. Obviously, none of us think the Lakers should be better than the Warriors next year. Do you see the potential for the Lakers to be better than the Warriors in the next 3 years?
Next 3 years, I don't know. I mean, it all just comes down, I guess, to the progression of the young guys. Obviously, if the young guys pan out, obviously that is that's a big step. But now you're looking at the Warriors. Are we assuming that the Warriors stay together? Because if we're assuming that they stay together, I don't see how anybody could beat that team, even with LeBron, because, I mean, LeBron's getting into those older years, and I think eventually he has to start declining. Eventually he has to start going downhill, and with the Warriors having 5 all-star starters potentially on their team in their starting roster, I don't know how you can beat that. I don't see it, because, I mean, at the end of the day, LeBron somehow is human. So eventually he has to start declining and showing some sort of decline. And we also would have to bank on the young guys hitting a big growth spurt and just in their progression of their skills. And I don't know how much that'll actually take place. We have to wait and see.
Yeah, I think I think something that Phil just mentioned, LeBron is human. We'll start to see a decline there, but I mean, the Warriors are human too. Like, they're 5 all-stars, but they're also 5 all-stars that can get hurt, at any point. I mean, look at the Celtics. They had 8 minutes of Gordon Hayward this past season before he was completely gone for the season, which changed the complete outcome of the East. If Gordon Hayward stays healthy, the Celtics win the East. I mean, the one season that the Warriors didn't finish things off was the one where Steph Curry was slightly injured. They're a great team. They're one of the best of all time, but they've gotten incredibly lucky when it comes to avoiding injuries to major players. And I think that's why really when people say, well, it's always just going to be the Warriors, things happen, man. And there are teams out there that if one thing goes wrong with the Warriors, there is a pool of talent. You've got Houston out west. You've got the teams out in the East that are ready to make a name for themselves. I think that there's still plenty of teams to take over for the Warriors once the Warriors finally make a misstep. Is it going to be the next year, 2 years? We don't know. But you're always ready for the Warriors to make that fatal mistake.
I have been saying the dynasties always end before we expect them to. That's how sports work. I thought this was going to be the year that the Warriors did not win. Before today, I thought the Celtics were going to win it all next year. I think they're the best positioned team to do so in the league. I think if Chris Paul doesn't get hurt, the Rockets do beat the Warriors, especially how Game 7 went. Yeah, you got a guy like Chris Paul. I think they take it home. The second half collapse doesn't happen nearly as much. The reason why I say dynasties always fall apart is for three big factors. One is ego, and that would include salary caps. Two would be injury, which you just mentioned they have been incredibly fortunate to avoid. And the one that has been the biggest problem is apathy. And that is what the Warriors, you can tell watching them, are not the same team when they first started. Not just the play style. Of course, that's different because Kevin Durant being introduced. They don't care as much as they did when they first got in the league and were first kind of blow up in the league. And what made them so good is Zach Lowe read a great article that everyone was talking about the glitz and glamour of the three-point shooting, but they were the best hustle stat team in the league by far. They got after it. They played solid defense, and they were just a really complete team. I think the winning constantly has kind of made them very easily beatable in games against teams that are more physical than them. That's what we saw with the Rockets, because when you go out and punch them in the face and they're not used to that, it's hard to recover from. When you're playing against really good teams, you can't just score at will every single game. Now, I think it's a lot of reactionary stuff, and the NBA is a very reactionary sport, and we're reactionary fans and people that cover the league. Whenever the Warriors have a game when they're on, they're the best team of all time. They're the best team that's ever been assembled. They're unbeatable. They had about one of those games, maybe two times the series. Most of the time, it was a lot of junk, and they were just more talented. I don't think that's going to continue on forever. I think with Cousins next year, if he's anything like he was when he comes back in January, February, whenever it is, they're going to be unstoppable because they have that low post presence that they haven't had in a long time that can just put buckets in, probably better than any setter in the league. But after he's gone, I just have a hard time imagining Klay Thompson taking another deal for less than he's worth. The dude's a max player. The dude is such an underrated somehow. I mean, he's an all-NBA guy, but he's still perpetually underrated in my opinion. And he's a guy that no matter what team he goes to, he fits the scheme because he's 3-and-D. And the league is 3-and-D now. And he's going to be a guy that can be fit in anywhere. So if he stays in Golden State, I will be beside myself. Because what else can you do? Because you got guys that are worth more money. And KD's done this multiple times now. I was really surprised to see him not sign the Supermax extension this year. He signed the 1-and-1. So he's going to be a free agent again next year, which I think is kind of interesting. I'm not saying that he's gone or anything like that, but I think it's very interesting because he can be making Steph money and he's making about $10 million less, but the chance to be a free agent again. It just seems like a lot of weird stuff is added up. It is just a really lucky, you mentioned, you're right, Dan, very lucky on the court of injury stuff-wise, not just them not facing them, but the teams they face have all seemed to have them. But it's also incredibly lucky that this team was even assembled because if it wasn't for the cap hike, Kevin Durant cannot sign there. If Kevin Durant does that or doesn't do that, I don't think people are taking the same pay cuts that they are right now to make this team possible, to sign Andre Iguodala, to sign Sean Livingston. I just don't think this dynasty ever happens. It all just kind of was the perfect storm, and it worked out. I don't see them losing this year, but I do see a couple of dudes leaving, and dynasties end. I can't imagine that it's going to continue for the next 3 years. Now, I don't know if the Lakers are going to be a team to do it, even with LeBron. Depends on who they can get. But I think someone else is going to come up in the West and take him down, because that's what always happens.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. There's always going to be an end, and I think you hit on that. You never expect it to come, when you actually think it's going to come, or it always comes right before you expect it, like you said.
I think Andy Bernard said it best. I wish you knew you were in the good old days while you were living them, and that's kind of how all dynasties seem to be. All right, Phil, I know you got to head out here soon, so a final question is, do you guys have a problem? Of course, big news today, Boogie Cousins signing for the MLE 5.3 and joining the Warriors. Do you have a problem with how the NBA has structured their cap, where it seems like players have really more control than ever and can form these super teams by taking less money? I mean, it's capitalistic. That's how life works. But do you think there should be something done about it to, I guess, make sure there is a competitive balance in the league?
I mean, it's one of those things. It's kind of hard to. I'm trying to think of the right word. It's kind of hard to contain it, because there's certain boundaries that you would have to set. Because I think it's awesome the fact that the players have so much power, because let's be honest, it's the players that bring in the revenue for the NBA. People aren't tuning in to watch coaching and to see what gets done on the coaching end or on the GM end, maybe unless you're San Antonio, because Pop is so iconic. But I mean, it's the players that bring it in. It's Steph Curry shooting 40-foot jump shots that should never be shot, but he somehow makes them on a very regular basis. And so, I mean, it's just it's that sort of thing that makes me think, well, they should have the power that they have, but when it comes to the earning money, it's like, I enjoy watching the Warriors just as a basketball fan, but at the same time, I 100% understand people's thing. It's like, what's the point of watching the regular season when you know that the real NBA Finals is going to be the Western Conference Finals? So there's issues from that aspect of the balance, I guess, of the conferences. But I don't really know of any way that you can do that without making all the players and everybody angry by telling them who they can and who they can't play for, or play with. And I think that creates an issue.
Yeah, I saw it best today. Somebody put, people resent big athletes like this when they get paid so much money. They get paid these enormous amount of money. And then they also get mad at them when they take less money, because it's about winning.
That's a good point.
Well, it's all about the money. They don't want to actually go win a thing. And then they take less money to win a championship. And it's the exact opposite. I'm never going to fault anybody for how they want to grind out and make their money. I'll never fault anyone for it. I'm with Phil. If I can understand if you are turned off by all of it, how almost predestined that it kind of seems now. But I think the fun in it is the show, the drama, everything else that surrounds it. I think it's the whole lead up to it is what makes it fun. And sometimes sometimes it's things like this that lead us to, kind of like what you said, Terry, the best finals that we've ever seen. You don't get that finals kind of same experience if the Warriors aren't pursuing that all-time record and being one of the all-time greatest teams of, the NBA history without it. So without things like this, you don't get memories like that or experiences like that. So I personally will still love it. I am going to enjoy the soap opera that will be next season, but I won't fault or hold it against anybody that's turned off by it. That's for sure.
I guess I'll have the final thought on it, and I have always taken your guys' approach. It's a capitalistic country. This is how it's based on choices in your employment. You can do whatever you want, and as long as it's in the boundary of the rules. So I have no issue with it. What I think is kind of scary, and it's all coming from DeMarcus Cousins today, is the blueprint that I think this kind of sets is that you can take a dude that's made a lot of money, DeMarcus has, and sign him for 1 year at 5.3 to get a ring. So if dudes like Jimmy Butlers of the world, the Greek Freaks of the world, like high-end players, we're talking all-stars, we're talking some of the best in the position, decided to take 1 year off to win a championship, just join the best team in the league, and that already has 3 to 4 guys, but play for the MLE or play for a minimum even, and after that, sign a big contract for another team after that, then I think we have an actual problem. Because if you do that and that starts becoming a blueprint, then how do you have basketball stay consistently worth watching if you have one team that just shuffles out these unbelievable players every single year at a low cost so they can get their ring and then leave? I don't know. I don't know if that would ever happen. I always believe that people like money enough that it should never be an issue, but it is continually proven at Golden State to not be a problem against all odds. So I'm still counting on the downfall. I'm still counting on Clay to leave. I don't think Boogie's going to be back next year or anything like that. Money usually comes through, and people like to have double the amount that they could make. And it's also about respect. I don't know, just at any job where if you are one of the best at your position at what you do, and people that are worse at you make more money, I think it's natural as a human being to want to make that much and then some. And that's just how it is. But I don't know. It is not happy right now in the NBA. I don't think it's a problem now, but if it starts becoming a trend, I think they do need to do some salary cap smoothing where it's based on accelerators and how long you've been in the league, how long you're with this team, where you can't have dudes that are really, really solid just cycling out every year for the MLE. But I don't know. Hopefully we never get to that point and it all works out gravy.
True that.
All right. Well, gentlemen, Dan, Phil, thank you so much for joining me tonight to talk a little bit about NBA free agent action. Until next time, this has been Terry Lash, and this is the podcast. Hope you had a great night.